We did see election in Ukraine over the weekend, and opposition leader Viktor Yanukovych is claiming victory after yesterday's vote, but his opponent is refusing to concede. In fact, Yanukovych took nearly 49% of the vote, and he's promising to cut taxes to help bring that country out of recession and to improve relations with Russia and the EU. Now, the current prime minister is the ruling party's presidential candidate and accuses Yanukovych of fraud and is promising to challenge the results. So the bottom line here, with a little bit of a question overhanging the results of the election, should you be putting your money to work in the Ukraine? We're turning to someone who invests in that market and has finding opportunities in this frontier nation. I'm turning now to Scott Licamele, who is with Red Star Asset Management. Tell me, it seems that there's a bit of uncertainty as a result of the election. Are you still going to put money to work here right now?
Yes, well, I would say just on the first point regarding the elections being contested, I would say that that was more, apparently it turned out to be more of a threat than a very serious threat. Essentially, Tymoshenko was saying she was going to contest it, but in reality, based on the current count, with 98% of the votes counted and the remaining being counted in eastern Ukraine, which is a Yanukovych supporter region, it appears that she's probably not going to attempt to go via the courts or attempt to really question the election results. So I think at this point we're looking at what will happen now in the Rada, the Ukrainian parliament, and we're under the impression that there probably will be a coalition government created by the Party of Regions. So we see the potential for a relative decrease in the short term of political risk there, assuming a coalition government can be created.
What makes you like this market?
Well, you know, we like the country. It's one of the largest countries in emerging Europe, and we feel that although there are some challenges with respect to demographics in terms of population growth not being terribly high, actually it's kind of negative, we still see potential growth there in various sectors: agriculture, steel, you know, metals and mining, even in the consumer sector. The banking sector had been very one of the highest growth areas prior to the financial crisis beginning in 2008.
I mean, the cost to insure against credit default swaps is very high there. That does convey a certain sense of, you know, perhaps instability maybe continuing to be an issue here. What specifically do you like there? We do know that this new Prime Minister, if in fact this does go through, the election results as they stand now, is very friendly to Russia. Does that mean that this is a way to access the Russian market? Well,
not so much. I mean, I think the relationship with Russia is just, can Ukraine engage in a more conciliatory relationship with the Russian Federation? And it appears that both candidates, both Tymoshenko and Yanukovych, were stating openly that not to give in, so to speak, to Russia, but just to maintain a more constructive relationship, I think was on their agenda. So I think that the play in Ukraine is more that you should see a decrease in political risk, assuming you see this coalition government coming in, assuming that relations with Russia are more stable, and because of that, there are significant opportunities both on the private equity side and in the public markets to access both, particularly metals mining, agriculture. And
you like a chicken manufacturer there.
Yes.
Tell me about this
Okay.
stock.
It's called MHP. It's actually traded in London, so it is relatively investable security for most people. But effectively, this company is a vertically integrated agricultural company. They do everything from grain production to poultry production, and it's interesting in a couple of senses. The vertical integration makes it highly efficient, and the fact that the Ukrainian currency has devalued has basically benefited them in a couple of ways. They have lower production costs. They do export some of their grain that is not used for poultry production, and it's also good import substitution play and also good play on just the overall consumer market in Ukraine. So we see that as a pretty interesting company. We like the management, and I think it has good prospects. Now,
outside of sort of the BRICS in Europe's backyard, you also like Vietnam as a frontier market. Now, there are concerns there about illiquidity in the foreign exchange market for them. I mean, tell me why you don't see that as too much of a concern.
Yes, well, there are concerns there, definitely. I mean, we saw the one-off deval in November of last year. They do have a situation with balance of payments. I believe their current currency reserves are only about $16 billion, which only covers about 3 months of imports. So there are are issues there on the macroeconomic and monetary side that concern us. But it is the second fastest growing economy in Asia, and we do see the demographics there as quite compelling. I mean, just to give you an example, Vietnam will have a larger population than Russia in about 25 years.
Really?
Yeah. So, I mean, you're looking at a tiny country with a massive population, very young.
But aren't they still very much leveraged to manufacturing and global demand for products? I mean, the story of it with Vietnam is that they're the cheaper alternative to China.
Yes, but that's shifting to a domestic consumption story. And I think that transitional process will help that market develop much more rapidly.
And you like Petro Vietnam drilling and well services there?
Yes, that's one company that is a subsidiary of Petro Vietnam, the government-owned company. These guys are basically developing, they provide oil field services for offshore rigs in the South China Sea. Once the disputes with China regarding the offshore oil fields are resolved, we expect that this company will have more and more contracts as the government is interested in promoting domestic providers of these services versus foreign participants. So we see the potential there as quite substantial for this company.
So a demographic bet in some ways in Vietnam, as well as a global economic recovery one. Thank you so much for giving us your insight on some alternatives to emerging. We're looking out in the frontier. That's Scott Licamele, Red Star Asset Management.